Hello, everyone. You can be seated if you're standing and find your seats. And we're going to be continuing where we left off last week. And remember, we were in Procedure 8 of the Workplace Manual. Procedure 8. And we were on the very bottom of page 19. Okay, the very bottom of page 19. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of recap a little bit there. And we're going to go into the second to the last paragraph. Well, we'll start right in the middle of the page there, right smack dab in the middle. And it says, our work relationships are strengthened by similarities in our personalities. Shared likes will usually motivate coworkers to get to know each other better. And remember, getting to know each other better should be done on our own time, not company time. If we're going to be hanging out or doing anything other than work, we should do that on our own time, on our breaks or our lunches, or get to know each other after work. Because we'd never want to take from the company time. That's all part of moral character, right? And it can help them to work together more efficiently. However, we cannot be too quick to judge someone's personality. The person who is quiet and reserved might appear to be conceited. The person who is talkative and frank might appear to be rude or aggressive. It's important to take the time to get to know others in order to appreciate who they are. And underline that, appreciate who they are, because everyone's different than us. And so we have to learn to appreciate our differences, right? Differences in personalities can cause serious conflicts within the workplace. Are you quiet and well organized while your coworker is loud and disorganized? Do you tidy up after yourself in the break room while others leave their spilled drinks and garbage on the table? Now that could be very upsetting, right? Working in an environment where personalities are opposite can be a challenge, and if handled inappropriately, can cause resentment and hostilities. In the last paragraph there, it says, personality clashes in the workplace can result in character clashes as well. The quiet, neat, organized person working next to the loud, disorganized coworker could one day lose his self-control and become verbally or physically violent. Or it could go the opposite. It could be the other one that loses their self-control. In fact, personality conflicts can lead to people revealing their true characters. I want you to underline that. These personality conflicts can lead people to reveal their real character. Because remember, our personality is what we put on, what we show people when we first meet them. That's our personality. So remember, we can have a fictitious personality that could be hiding our real character, right? Let's face it, there are many conflicts that can lead to people revealing their true characters. There are many different kinds of people, and regardless of our personality differences, we must learn to work together peacefully. Now, that is a goal of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, to guide people to work together and live together peacefully. That's the whole goal of the program. In the upcoming chapters, we will learn about the importance of accepting and tolerating the differences in others. Now, remember, there was a particular unit that we covered a while back that taught us in this certification program how to tolerate the differences in others. Can anyone shout that out? What unit that was? That was the acceptance unit, right? The acceptance unit. As well as how effective, respectful communication can help alleviate some of the tensions that arise due to conflictive personalities. And there's always going to be, you're not always going to work with people that you get completely along with and they're just like you. It would be a little bit boring if everybody was exactly like you, right? So now we're going to go to this, what's your personality? And this is something that we should do. We should actually take this little quiz here, it's not really a quiz, but this little checklist. It says directions. The following is a list of common personality traits. So these are common ones. There's more. This is not the limited list that this is it. These are common ones. Circle the ones that best describe you and put a check next to the personality traits that you look for in others. So circle the ones that best describe you and put a check mark next to the personality traits that you look for in others. So those would be the personality traits that somewhat attract you to them, right? Put a check mark there. And we're going to read some of them. Talkative, outgoing, sloppy, sweet, humorous, friendly, timid, personable, serious, pleasant, clever, conceited, thoughtful, carefree, funny, adventurous, down-to-earth, easygoing, shy, careful, sophisticated, spoiled, affectionate, quiet, and boring. How many of you are attracted to boring people? Not many, right? Even boring people don't want to be boring, and boring people don't know they're boring most of the time. Now here it says, list 3 personality traits that you like in others. So you're going to list, and you should really do this exercise, even if you don't want to write it in your own book as the teacher, you should list those. List 3 personality traits that you like in others, okay? List 3 personality traits you dislike in others. And are there any personality traits that you have, now this is putting the focus on you, that can be a problem for others? This is the part of the class, teachers, that you have to let them know, yes, there are certain things that we all have that are problems for others. Because there's opposite personalities. Everyone's not the same, right? List them below and tell why. Why do you think that your personality traits that you listed could be a problem for others? Well, let's do an example together. If somebody's sloppy, how could that possibly be a problem for others? I want you to think about that. How could that be a problem for others? What could that possibly cause? Okay? So then you would do that little exercise there. And now we're going to turn back to the lesson plan. Remember on page 5, and we're going to read procedure 9 now. We finished off procedure 8. We're going to read procedure 9. And it says, guide class discussion by asking students to identify some of the drawbacks of employees being hired on the basis of personality alone. Okay, some of the drawbacks. Emphasize that together, character and personality paint a complete picture of who we are. Read or have students read page 21 entitled, Looking Beyond Personality. Allow students a few minutes to write 2 or 3 character and personality traits of other people that they work with, and 2 to 3 character personality traits of people that they would rather not work with. Have students explain why for both lists. Allow volunteers to share with the class. Okay, now there's bound to be someone in your work area that you don't get along with that personality trait, right? There's going to be that coworker. But we should strive to work peacefully with them regardless. The peaceful solution says, look for ways to help them. If someone's sloppy, look for a way to help them be organized and be neater. They might really appreciate that from you. It's true. You know why I know that? Because I appreciate when somebody tries to help me organize my workspace. They give me little helpful hints. And don't you appreciate when somebody gives you helpful things? But what you don't appreciate is when they then don't want to work with you and don't want to try to help you. And we should never give up on anyone, right? That's the goal, to make productive people out of everyone. So we're going to jump over now to page 21. Page 21. And remember, just like the previous page that we read last week was very close to the character unit, page 23, this page is very close to the character unit, page 25. So you can reference that and write that in your book, okay? And so procedure 9, you write that on the top there. And it's looking beyond personality, or you might say character versus personality. Although personality is important in how we get along with others, it does not indicate the measure of a person's true character. Okay, and that's why, remember, when we first meet someone, we're seeing their personality. We don't know whether or not they might be so nice. How many of you met someone new in the past week? Raise your hand if you've met someone new in the past week. Okay, I met somebody new in the past week. What you met was their personality. That's what they show you. But do you know whether or not they're honest? Do you know that yet? No, because they haven't stood the test of time, we like to call it. Keep in mind that personality is what we notice right away when we meet someone. It is how we present ourselves. I want you to underline that. How we present ourselves. You know, you present yourself, you'll put a nice little package. I want to present myself to you. This is how I want to present myself. I'm going to wear my nice clothes. I'm going to wear, possibly, I tried to do my hair for you tonight, but it's very humid. It just went blue. But I wanted to present myself in a particular way to teach the class. That's what I'm presenting to you. But when I stand up here and teach the class, and you're seeing me teach, and you're seeing my personality come out in my teaching, do you know the real inside me by just coming and sitting in the class? You really don't, do you? You know that I'm presenting myself as the teacher. I'm reading the words on the page. I'm expounding on the program. But do you know what's going on inside my mind? Do you know what motivates me to do certain things? You don't really know that about me yet. I like to use myself as an example. It's the same way when you first meet anyone. That's why it's very important, especially in the workplace, that when we're teaching this to the supervisors or the work area in general, to let them know to be very careful, because you can form friendships at work that might not be the most positive. And there's not a lot about influences in here, but remember what we've learned about influences, okay? In fact, if we meet someone who appeals to us after only one conversation, we think to ourselves, oh, he or she seems like such a nice person. How many of you have ever thought that when you first met someone? I know I have. That person seems so nice. Where's my wallet? My wallet was sitting right here. Because even though they seemed so nice, while you were distracted, their character came out, and with their niceness, they got you in the niceness, and they took your wallet. That's their character. They're not honest. They steal, and they got out of Dodge. They left with your wallet. That's why it's so important. Character stands the test of time. You can write that down. Character stands the test of time. You watch your coworkers. You see, how do they react in certain situations? What do they do? How do they react? What is their reaction long term? Not just once, but watch, watch, watch. Remember that observation. Character, on the other hand, is what helps you determine what is right and wrong. Character defines the way that you treat yourself and the way you treat others. It dictates. Character dictates. Character is what dictates your moral and ethical beliefs. It is not as easy to recognize a person's character as it is to recognize their personality. Now, I want you to really focus in, if you have your books in front of you, on this next sentence. Sometimes a positive character might be hidden A positive character, now we've learned in other units that a negative character can sometimes be hidden with a fictitious personality. But did you ever flip it around like it does right here in the workplace? A positive character might be hidden behind negative personality traits. And I know we did hit on that some already. We have learned that. But that doesn't stick in our mind as much as the other one, does it? So the sloppy, boring coworker might be the most honest friend or coworker or worker. They might be the very most honest and compassionate. Take the time to learn about the person's character, regardless of his or her personality. I want you to highlight this whole paragraph that we're reading, because this is where the peaceful solution actually gives us the solution step. You got a problem with somebody's personality? This is the peaceful solutions solution step right here, okay? So you're going to highlight this. You're taking the time, regardless of their personality, to look for ways to deal with someone's personality. Take the time. Take the time to learn the person's character. Look for ways. There's your step. Look. Now, it's on you. You're looking. You're trying to do something here. It's on you. You're the individual. This is your step. Sloppy Sue, that works next to you. That rhymes. Look for ways to deal with someone's personality that's different from yours, right? You have everything just so, everything's just right. Look for ways to work together. Look for ways to get along. Look for ways to make peace. Remember, this is called the peaceful solution. The author didn't name it that for no reason. The solution that we seek should always be peaceful. So it says, to find out about someone's character, observe them for a while, making a moral decision. How do they respond to the situation? Watch. For example, does your coworker usually have something negative to say about others, or is she consistently rude to customers? I don't know why she called and asked that. Why is she always calling and asking this? Doesn't she know by now to do that? How come she's always bringing her dresses back? We've been selling her dresses for 3 years. She's always bringing her dresses back. That's a rude display about the customer in front of the other coworkers. We have to be really careful about that. Is that an easy trap to fall into? Is everybody shaking their head up and down? So are we going to be like, oh, I'm just not going to have anything to do with that person anymore in the work area? No, we're going to try to help. I'm a very talkative person. I've been trying to practice being a little bit more quiet this week, and I don't know if any of the people that I work with have noticed. I've made a really great effort. They're probably like, haven't noticed. Because sometimes it's better to be quiet than to just talk endlessly. So you might give that advice to a coworker. You know, I know that you don't like empty space, but sometimes it's okay to have quiet in the workplace. It's okay to say that, right? Look for ways. See something and look for ways to help. In the workplace environment, you have to look past the personality to recognize both positive and negative character traits. I work with people that are very helpful. They're very helpful people. They go out of their way to be helpful. So that's a really great thing that I have that kind of peoples that I work with. But I haven't always worked in work areas that are like that. But you can get it to the point that it becomes that. And what is the example that you should give them? Your own, right? You have to lead by the example. You should be helpful, not just what, I don't know. Don't be the one doing that. You have to lead by example. Remember the VIP? Value, imitate, and what else? Practice, yes. The qualities that determine character are based upon the choices that we make. It is up to us to recognize that these choices will, over time, establish a pattern of behavior. Underline that and write the word habit. And we've learned a lot about habit in this course that we've been taking. Establish a pattern of behavior. Now, this pattern, or what becomes our habit, shows we have a tendency to act in a specific way. And I'm here to say we're going to get to that in a minute. People expect, if you're always one that reacts in a particular way, then they're going to expect it. And when the situation comes, you can almost see them waiting for your reaction. But if it's not a positive reaction in the workplace, if we normally turn our back on the person giving us an instruction and roll our eyes and look at somebody else, then don't do that because your coworker is expecting that from you. That's a negative thing that you can really work on. And if they're expecting it, they're seeing that you don't do that, and you're changing your reputation. If the supervisor always would get upset and start yelling at everybody, and something occurs and everyone's expecting the supervisor or the boss to start yelling at everyone, and they don't, and they start talking and saying, look, let me show you why we don't do this. Everybody come look. And they start teaching and guiding instead. You're changing your, what is it called? Your reputation. Because you've changed your habit, your pattern is now different. And then the reaction eventually, because at first when you make a change, whether you're the worker or whether you're the supervisor, once you make that change, for a while, they might not see the change. And that's when people get frustrated and they go back to their old ways. It doesn't matter what I do, if I yell and scream, or if I do this or that. Because it takes a while for everyone to learn to trust that you've really tried to change your pattern and you want a different, what is the R word? Reputation. And remember, that's from the character unit, page 90, that we learned about reputations. And they go in front of you. Your reputation precedes you. Oh, I've heard about her. Oh, you work in that, you work for her, you work for him? Oh, that's a reputation. The important thing to remember is that each choice that we make concerning how we treat ourselves, others, and the environment determines the traits that we will develop. And remember, developing is a changing, ongoing thing that we do all the time, right? Okay, so now we're going back to the lesson plan, and we're going to read procedure 10. We're going back to page 5 now. We're going back to page 5. And we're going to read procedure 10. And it says, conclude by explaining that the process by which we are interviewed for a job is evidence that character and personality are vital to the workplace. Reiterate the importance of learning about character so that we can foster pleasant and productive work environments. And isn't that the goal? We want a pleasant work environment, but we also want to make sure that it's productive, right? If everybody's just if it's only pleasant and everyone's laughing, ha ha ha, and nothing gets done the whole day, then it's not productive. If it's, very rigid and no one likes to come to work, but then it's still not going to be productive, because when people aren't enjoying themselves, they're not productive. So we have to have a pleasant and productive workplace. Now, see where it says note there at the bottom? It says note. The Peaceful Solution Character Education Incorporated values any feedback that you would like to share regarding the behavioral modification noted after this program is taught. So if any changes you see, email us. Email the program, they want to know. Please send your valuable feedback is valuable feedback to info@peacefulsolution.org. Okay? So we have actually, you finished chapter 1. Great job, everyone. And I think I only have a couple minutes, but this would be a nice time to break and welcome up the other teacher to actually just get started right into lesson number 2, chapter 2, okay? So at this time, I'd like to welcome our next teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to pick up right where she left off in starting chapter 2, which is on page 23. And this is the overview of this chapter. And the title of this chapter is Self-Control, the Essential Ingredient to a Successful Work Environment. Now, stop and think, what does a successful work environment mean to you? Okay, what defines the success of a working environment? Is it how much things get accomplished? Raise your hand if you agree that it's how many things get accomplished. Okay, some people. Is it how the people around you feel while you're accomplishing things? Anyone go for that one? Okay. Is it the way that you interact with the people while you do things? Okay. Now, if you notice, not everyone raised their hands for the same question, which means a lot of people in an environment value different things. They view different things as a successful work environment. But the one thing that's an essential ingredient in all of those scenarios is self-control. So let's read what it means. It says self-control means not yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions. So if you want to highlight that, that's our definition. Not yielding to impulsive thoughts or actions. And the definition of impulsive is acting without thinking of the consequences. Acting without thinking of the consequences. It says the ability to stop, think, and then proceed on with a right choice is self-control and is essential for all employees to acquire and demonstrate at all times in order to have a peaceful work environment. Okay, so that's a lot of information. First of all, we have to have the ability to stop and think, which is not something that everyone just has, right? It's something that takes time, and it's an ability that you have to acquire, and then go a step further and demonstrate it at all times in order for there to be a peaceful work environment. So self-control is the foundation of all positive character and is what enables us to make responsible and respectful choices. So that's something else you can underline. It's the foundation, and we heard about that a lot in the previous units. It says, what is a work environment like where even one employee does not practice self-control on a consistent basis? Doesn't it throw the whole entire environment off? Everyone else in the environment could be calm and practicing self-control, but if one person does something, the whole environment changes. Because remember, needing people is what makes the world go around. Continuing, it says, employee theft, sexual harassment, insubordination, uncontrolled anger, and impulsive behaviors are only some ways a lack of self-control affects the workplace. It is a proven fact that problem employees can cost a company in overall productivity. Therefore, invest in training your staff to develop positive character traits such as self-control. And I really like that word, invest. because it tells that you have to give something to get something, right? Because a lot of times even if it's in schools or workplaces, we expect character education to be something that's immediate, right? Everyone automatically has it. I don't want to have to take the time to train someone in how to be an effective worker. I don't want to train someone. I don't want to take the time to stop and do that. But how much does it cost you in the long run if you don't take the time to invest, not only in yourself as a leader, not only yourself as a teacher, yourself as a coworker, whatever role you play, that investment goes both ways. And then taking the opportunity to train your staff, because how can you expect something of someone if they haven't been taught? Okay, and then it goes past that test of self-control. It's what you do when no one's looking. So if you're the boss and you take the time to invest in your coworkers, when you're not there, guess what? You get more product than if when you're there and you're yelling at them or however you choose to discipline or lead them, and when you turn your back, then they might go off and do their own thing. So training them that it is important that that investment, no matter what aspect it is, that investment is what turns out the profit. Continuing, it says self-control, like other positive character traits, needs to be developed. And our previous teacher just told us that development is a continuous process over time. And remember last class on page 14, we covered the steps there. So if you want to reference that, you can. The steps to developing that positive character. Hence, the need for training employees how to develop self-control is an imperative part of a successful work environment. The problems that stem from a lack of self-control can be avoided if employees are taught what self-control is and encouraged to practice self-control to be respectful and responsible at all times. Okay, and a lot of times it takes us not to assume. Now, back to my reference, I'm sorry, children. Okay, when you teach them, some things you just expect them to know, right? So you can be talking and they'll stop and ask you, what's an airplane? And you stop and you're like, how do you not know what an airplane is? One flies over your head all day. Of course you don't say that. But in your mind, you're like, how do you not know? Guess what? There are adults like that. Sometimes your coworkers, you expect them to do something, but they have no idea. And a lot of times we assume that people know things. We assume that they should be better. We assume that it should be one way. But here's the thing. Everything we know, we were taught. And if no one ever takes the time to stop and teach you, you wouldn't expect yourself to know it, and the people around you can't be expected to know it or to do it if no one took the time to teach them. And sometimes that's all it takes. Okay, so let us continue now into our lesson plan. So what is the purpose of this lesson? The purpose is that students will learn that self-control is the foundation, it's the most integral part of positive character and is essential to a successful, productive, and peaceful work environment. And in that purpose objective, it tells us what a work environment should be like. It should be three things: successful, it should be productive, and it should be peaceful. And without those three character traits, or without those three qualities, a workplace is not successful. Continuing, it says, the note. Before class, prepare demonstration for Procedure 2 and activity in Procedure 7. Okay, and we will get to that as well. It says, welcome students to class and encourage them to continue in their training of positive moral character in the workplace. Review the previous lesson by asking the following questions. And so I'm going to ask you these questions, even though we just went over it, so it'll be fresh in your minds. First, what is the difference between character and personality? What is the difference between character and personality? You all know this. Somebody can just yell it out to me. What is character? I heard morals somewhere in there. Anything else? Okay. Yes, it's the combination of morals and beliefs that dictate how we treat others, ourselves, and the environment. It is the basis on which our every thought, action, and decision is derived, the means by which we distinguish between right and wrong. And personality is the combination of our personal preferences, attitudes, and basic interactions. Okay, so there you can reference page 1 and page 9. And then we just covered what personality was on page 19. as well. Okay, and second question, why is it important to emphasize positive moral character in the workplace? And we just went over what character was, so we just said that it determines our choices, right? And then the respect, responsibility, and self-control and other positive character traits are what are needed in the workplace to ensure that we treat others appropriately and display a positive work ethic in order to work together peacefully and effectively. And you could reference page 8, the last paragraph, and you can also reference page 11. Okay. Thank you. And then we'll turn over to the next page. And here is where this demonstration would come into play. Okay, so prior to class, you would have 2 volunteers to role play a situation where an employee is angry with the supervisor and is not displaying self-control. And then we discuss these things. So which negative character traits is the employee demonstrating? And it lists lack of self-control, disrespect, and irresponsibility. And we could think of lots of others, right? There could be impatience, there could be a lack of compassion. A lot of other things play into those factors. And question B would be, what are some short and long-term results of the employee's actions? They could be fired, and we'll have poor references for future employment. And also, we know that the environment of the workplace would be different, and that would be less successful. Okay? And going on to procedure 3 now. It says, tell students that without self-control, a foundational character trait, not only do we sabotage ourselves, but we can put our lives and the lives of others in danger. And that word sabotage means to deliberately destroy or damage. So without self-control, we can deliberately destroy or damage our lives or the lives of others. It says choose participants to read the introduction page found on page 29 and also the section entitled Just What is Self-Control? Found on page 30. Discuss and expound. Emphasize that impulsive behaviors can lead to regret. Does anyone remember where we talked about impulsive behaviors? Anyone? It was in the self-control unit, page 86. And pretty much throughout the self-control unit, it references that. But it talked about how hindsight is 20/20, right? And that when that leads to that regret, then suddenly everyone knows what they should have done, what they should have said. And I don't know about you, but usually when I'm showering is the time where I replay all the conversations and all the things that I should have said, what I could have done, and this, and my brain works up all of these scenarios, right? And you can figure out all the things in that moment, and then you're like, oh, this is what I should have said. This is how I should have handled it. But to prevent that, we learn how to remove those impulsive behaviors from our character. Then it says, read the scenario on page 31 as a class, comparing the negative and positive thoughts to their respective consequences. Okay. So now let us turn to page 29. Okay, so quote at the top says, if positive character were a house, self-control would be the foundation. So we have an example. Does anyone like to read that first paragraph? Yes, in the back. I guess you can just talk very loud. Okay, what do we think? Do we think she practiced self-control? No. So the scenario told us that Sharon was very fed up with her boss, and she took it out by speaking disrespectfully, and she threw her keys against the wall and then slammed the door. Now, it says, have you ever been in Sharon's place? Maybe not have acted out, but have you ever felt that way, where you just want to throw things and slam the door and let everyone know how upset you are? Has anyone ever been like that? Yes, okay, we've all felt like that. Whether or not we've gone through with it is a testament to our character, but we've all felt like that at some point in time. Or know of anyone who has acted in a similar fashion. It says, even if you do not know someone personally, news reports tell of people who have clearly shown a lack of self-control in the workplace. There are situations like these that help us appreciate working in an environment where people make right choices in regards to dealing with their frustrations and anger issues. Now, it's a sad fact that it takes the moral deficit that our society is in right now for us to appreciate when positive character is demonstrated. So, all of the times we take for granted sometimes the way that we interact with the people that we're close to. And when someone randomly shows an act of lack of self-control, suddenly we appreciate those moments. Okay? And a lot of times we don't realize that how much we appreciate something until we see the lack of it. And that's what's taking place in society right now. All of a sudden, everyone wants people to practice self-control, wants people to act in a way that just demonstrates moral character because there's such a deficit of it. It says, but even if people don't go around telling off the boss and overturning chairs, they display a lack of self-control in many other ways. Backstabbers, gossips, whiners, and bullies all lack self-control. Insubordination, sexual harassment, or purposely undermining a coworker are all some other ways that a lack of self-control affects the work environment. And the word insubordination means defiance to instruction or authority. Okay, so the ability, no matter how it is, it could be defiance in your thoughts, it could be defiance in the way you display your emotions, it could be defiance in your actions, whether it's outright actions, whether it's even small ones. All of those things show a lack of self-control. And then it says it affects the work environment. So it doesn't just affect you. And yeah, your boss's back might be turned, or yes, the coworkers might not see you at that moment. But no matter what you do, it still affects the environment around you. Self-control is a foundational character trait that enables, or it's a tool that the individual can use to manage anger and act in ways that promote respect, positive interactions, and compassion, even when upset. Self-control is necessary for all positive relationships and for the success of any work environment. Okay, so it tells us two very important things there. That we can have relationships and we can have work environments. But in order for them to be positive, in order for them to be successful, which are two things everyone wants, they must have self-control. Those are the important qualifications. And how do we practice self-control? And we turn to page 30, and it gives us help. Just what is self-control? Not yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions. Now, here's a very important thing. So self-control requires learning to control your thoughts, because thoughts lead to feelings, controlling your feelings because feelings lead to actions, and controlling your actions because actions can lead to consequences or rewards. So it requires discipline. And we talked about last week how hard it is to think about what you're thinking, right? When you have to think about what you're thinking, it gets pretty exhausting. But then you control your feelings, and then your feelings control your actions, and you eliminate all of the problems, all of the trouble that you yourself could have or the people around you by just being able to discipline your thoughts. And we have a breakdown of how we do that here. It says, John works for Company B. This is on page 31. He sent a shipment to a wrong address and was reprimanded by his supervisor. Reprimanded means to be corrected. It says, although he is usually polite and well organized, he hates to be corrected. There are two ways John can look at the situation. Okay, now last week we talked about empathy. So I want you to think of a situation where you have felt like this. Anything where you have done something and someone had to tell you and you felt, I don't really want them to tell me about this. We've all had those moments. So think about this. What did you think? And let's compare it to his thoughts here. Negative thoughts. What is he yelling at me for? So what? I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. I hate working here. They don't pay me enough to put up with this aggravation. I probably won't get a raise. I'll just put in for vacation. I'm sure he won't give me my time off either. See the spiral? He's already taken himself out of a job just because someone told him how to fix something. We went from point A all the way to point Z just based on his thoughts. What is he feeling now? He's feeling frustrated, angry, irritable, unappreciated, resentful, hostile. We're going down a spiral. Actions. He could have been disrespectful to his supervisor, slammed a door, pushed people out of his way, got into shouting matches with a few of his coworkers, just because someone told them, hey, look, you sent this to a wrong address. Went from who knows how the supervisor told it to me. It could have been a nice way, it could have not been a nice way, but regardless, it was one thing that he had to fix. And now he's possibly hurt other people, coworkers, gotten himself fired. Look at the escalation that took place, okay? Now let's look at the positive side. Well, I did send it to the wrong address because I wasn't being careful. He's a supervisor, and it's his job to make sure everything is done correctly. I'll start double-checking my orders before I ship them to make sure they're going to the right place. So we see he demonstrated positive character traits in his thinking. So he took the opportunity to be humble and to reflect, okay, yes, it's something that I could have done. But then he showed empathy. Guess what? Your supervisor has a job too. They're not just there to tell you what to do. They're there to ensure that the job gets run smoothly. And if you don't do your job right and they let you not do your job right, they're doing their job wrong. And guess what? They could get fired too. So it's not just about how we feel, it's about the effect that it has on other people. So he took the time to have empathy. Okay, he's just trying to make sure I do my job, and that's part of his job. Now his feelings. He's remorseful, he's embarrassed, but then he's apologetic and determined not to make the same mistake again. Now I want you to notice how remorseful and embarrassed are not things that we want to feel all the time, right? But guess what side they're on? They're on the positive side, because he followed it up with the ability to reflect and choose not to make that choice again. Whatever his actions, he quickly apologized and voiced that he would be more careful in the future. He offered to assist in rectifying the situation. Now let's compare the consequences and the rewards. The consequences, one was that he was no longer considered for advancement. His coworkers didn't want him around anymore, and eventually he quit. What are the rewards? He earned the respect of the supervisor. Because of his double-checking plan, he did not make the same mistake again, and he was considered for promotion. Okay, now let's stop and think. He loses his job. How is he going to be able to pay for a place to live? How is he going to be able to pay for the things he needs to eat? Does he have a family? Does he have children? Does he have other people he has to provide for? He lost all of that because someone asked him to fix something. When you put it like that, it seems pretty ridiculous, right? But that's the spiral our negative thoughts take us down. Versus when he could have nipped it right in the bud, he got a promotion. Guess what? He could probably afford a better place to live and even more food to support the family. All of those things stemmed from just his thoughts. So what do we conclude? It says when Jah did not practice self-control, his thoughts and feelings spiraled out of control, causing him to act irrationally, and he suffered the consequences of losing respect from his supervisor and coworkers. Practicing self-control in this situation means stopping and realizing that correction is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to accept responsibility for your actions and learn from your mistakes. And what does that take? It takes humility. And we learned the list of character traits was on page 13. Humility is one of them. And like we talked about last week, we're not perfect. We have room to grow, and that's one of the better things about us, is that we don't have to stay the way we are. Okay, yes, we do something. You're growing, you're learning, and that's part of that process. And we take the pressure of always having to do everything right. The second someone tells us something is wrong, we're devastated. Oh no, I'm not perfect. Guess what? No one is, right? So everyone has the opportunity to learn from it, to grow from it, and just take it as an opportunity because that's what it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn back to page 26. And let's look at procedure number 4. It says talk to participants about experiences or situations that trigger or cause them to feel upset. Explain that everyone has triggers and are susceptible to them. Therefore, we must be prepared or set our minds in advance to deal with our triggers appropriately. Discuss the section entitled Triggers found on page 32 and have participants complete the exercises on pages 32 through 33 and allow volunteers to share with the class. So we have a few minutes left, so let's go ahead and look at page 32. Triggers. It says a trigger is an incident that stirs up the emotion of anger, frustration, or resentment. And simply put, a trigger is something that stirs up any emotion. It doesn't have to be positive or negative. It doesn't have to be just anger. It's any emotion. If you smelt cookies and you have a memory, guess what? The cookies were a trigger. If you were coloring with a certain color and you remember a flower that you saw last week, that color was a trigger. Very simple things can be triggered. Now remember that anger is a what kind of emotion? Secondary, which is why triggers are so important, because we feel something first. There's something that we feel before we get angry. There's something that we feel before we act out with frustration. There's something that we feel before we respond with resentment. It says one of the first steps in practicing self-control is to recognize what your triggers are. And I'm going to also say why you have those triggers. Sometimes it's important to understand why. It says different people have different triggers. In the previous scenario, John's trigger was being reprimanded or corrected by his supervisor. For others, a trigger might not be getting in their way, but overlooked for some promotion, or feeling as they did not get the credit they deserved. Then here it says, list some of your triggers in the work environment, and you can take the time to do that on your own. But I want us to stop and think. John had a trigger for being corrected. Why did he have that trigger? What occurred at some point in time that allowed him to be triggered when someone corrected him? Okay? Stopping and thinking about why is part of the essential part in overcoming them. Okay? And then the bottom here, it tells us once you've identified those triggers, the next step is to honestly determine the thoughts they evoke. Now, we've lived lives, right? Some of we're years old, no matter where those years range, right? We've lived lives. And sometimes our thoughts can feel attached to an emotion, right? We think something and we think automatically we feel a certain way. But guess what? We can reprogram them. We can retrain them. And part of understanding, okay, I'm triggered when I smell burning cookies because at one point in time I was in a building that almost burned down. And if your coworker is burning something in the oven, hey, you didn't turn that off, you immediately yell. Why do you feel like that? Do you feel scared? Do you feel threatened? Are you remembering the time when you almost were in a house that's burned down? Then we can start to, like it says, use positive thoughts to help you optimistically find the ways to handle the situation in a beneficial way. Okay, yes, last time I burned cookies, my house had almost burned down, but this is okay. They just smoked. We'll clean it up and it will be all right. That empathy also comes into play to be able to understand why you do the things you do so you can tell yourself how to fix them. It says they help you understand the actions of others and to accept responsibility for your own actions. So again, our character development is not just for us, because then when we have our coworkers, when we are the one who's burning the food in the oven and they yell at us, we can be able to say, okay, last time I reacted like this, it was because I was feeling this way about this situation. Maybe they are having a moment where they're triggered by something, or maybe they're feeling a certain way. And it gives us the ability to empathize. So that self-awareness, even though it can feel immediate, we have the steps that we stop. We think about our thoughts, okay? Then we think about our feelings and why we may have reacted the way that we did. It says positive thoughts help you decide on a plan of action rather than focus on the negative. And our lives are full of plans of action. We get up in the morning, we decide the plan of action, getting ready to brush our teeth. All the things that we've done are patterns of behavior that we've learned that are habits, but the way that we respond to situations can be habits that we can develop as well. If you know that something is something that upsets you or causes you to feel a certain way, when I hear this, or when someone says this, or when I feel this way, this is what I'm going to do. If a door slams and I don't like the slamming of doors, this is what I'm going to do. Stopping and redirecting those thoughts gives us a plan. And I don't know about you, but I always feel better when I have a plan. Everyone else? Yes, I always feel better when I have a plan. Now, what do negative thoughts do? Negative thoughts, on the other hand, they fuel anger, are disrespectful to others and ourselves, and seek only to justify our own actions. Negative thoughts keep us from accepting accountability to our wrongdoing and can lead to blaming others and putting all the responsibility for the problem on someone else. Okay, so here's the important thing. Even though it's important to understand why we do the things we do, we can't go and justify them to someone else. Well, guess what? I yelled at you because when I was 6, this occurred and blah, 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 so you're just going to have to deal with me. Nope. We don't justify them. We understand to correct them. We understand to improve upon them. And we take accountability. And we learned about that word accountability. It's the ability to own up for our own actions, right? And we appreciate when someone else does that. And it's important that we're able to do that ourselves. And it says, identify the thoughts you may have when you experience one of the triggers listed. So if you want, you can take your own time and encourage others to do this on their own time as well, to list some of those triggers and then thoughts that you might have in that situation. It says the effects of negative thoughts. How do negative thoughts impact our actions and ultimately our behavior? In the previous scenario on page 31, John's negative thoughts fueled his anger, which caused him to feel resentful, irritated, and unappreciated. And when we think fuel, I automatically think fire, right? So the fire could have been put out. He could have saved his job. He could have saved his livelihood if he had extinguished those negative thoughts and replaced them with cool, positive ones. Continuing, it says, negative thoughts can hamper the growth of a positive moral character. It has the ability to affect every organ in our bodies and can stain interactions and relationships. In fact, like anger can make us physically sick. It says, focusing on negative thoughts and allowing them to dominate our lives can change our perception of others and ourselves. That's a very important line. Focusing on negative thoughts, which means we're going to have them, but if we focus on them and we allow them to dominate, we allow them to take over, we allow them to dictate our lives, it changes the way that we see things of others and ourselves. So guess what? We can create our own reality that is completely separate from everyone else's. So we walk in a room and we expect everyone to feel a certain way about us, or we think that they're having a certain reaction that is completely based on our own perception, which shows us how powerful those thoughts are. It says festering negative thoughts can leave us vulnerable to ourselves, to others, to allowing negative character to start to seep in, leave us vulnerable, angry, and hostile. Knowing the dangers of negative thoughts and the havoc they wreak on our personal and professional lives should be a strong, motivating force to learn how to control them. And at the bottom, it says, harboring negative thoughts can literally be compared to drinking poison. Okay? And no one's going to drink poison and expect to function to the best of their ability, right? So in order for us to live successful, productive, and peaceful lives that then translate to our work environment and creating that peaceful work environment, we have to be able to control our thoughts and stop and evaluate the way that we allow them to affect others. We don't allow them to continue our lives, to dominate over our lives. And that is where we are going to stop for this evening, and we will pick up on page 34 in our next class. Okay. We'd like... Okay, so can we stand for closing prayer?